Welcome to Honeybee. Don't forget to subscribe, and hit the bell. Real stories of love, lies, and betrayal, where every truth stings. Let's begin. It happened on an ordinary evening that felt far too quiet for what was about to come. My wife, Clara, sat across the table, her expression unusually calm. The room smelled faintly of her favorite jasmine candle, the one she lit whenever she wanted to talk about something serious. I could sense something wasn't right the moment she avoided my eyes. I thought maybe she was nervous about work or one of our usual disagreements. But when she reached into her bag and pulled out a stack of papers, my stomach tightened. She placed them neatly on the table, aligned them with the edge like she always did when she wanted control over the moment. Then, with a soft, almost relieved sigh, she said, "These are the divorce papers." Her voice didn't shake. Her eyes didn't water. She looked at me with a smile that wasn't cruel, but it wasn't kind either. It was the kind of smile people give when they've already made peace with something painful. For a few seconds, I just stared at the papers. The words on them didn't make sense to me. Divorce? After all we had been through? My mind went blank. I looked up at her, searching for a reason, for anything that could explain what I had done wrong. She folded her hands together and said, "I'm tired of living like this, David. I need something more. Someone who understands me in ways you don't." Those words cut deeper than she realized. I had spent years trying to understand her, trying to be the husband she wanted. I worked late nights to keep our home secure, made sure she never had to worry about bills or comfort. But she wasn't talking about money or support. There was something else in her tone, a kind of emotional emptiness that I hadn't seen before. Then came the part that truly broke me. She said, "I want you to accept my friend, Ethan. He's important to me, and if you can't understand that, maybe we shouldn't be together anymore." At first, I thought I had misheard her. "Accept him." I repeated, trying to process what she meant. She nodded, her fingers tracing the edge of the papers. "He's been there for me when I needed someone. We've grown close. But it doesn't have to mean the end for us, David. We can make this work, if you accept that he's part of my life now." The words echoed in my head, part of my life. I didn't know whether to laugh or break down. Was she asking me to share her? To allow another man to exist in the space that used to belong only to us? My throat went dry, and I could barely find my voice. "You're saying you want both of us?" She didn't flinch. "I want freedom. I don't want to feel trapped by titles or expectations. I care about you, but I also care about him. If you love me, you'll understand that." I leaned back, staring at her as if she had turned into someone else entirely. This wasn't the woman who once promised forever, who used to hold my hand during storms and whisper that we'd get through anything. This was someone distant, detached, as if our years together were just a chapter she was ready to close. The silence that followed was heavier than anything I'd ever experienced. My heart pounded in my chest, and the walls seemed to close in. "So that's it?" I asked finally. "You're giving me a choice between you and your friend." She gave a small shrug, her eyes still calm. "I'm giving you a choice between holding me prisoner and letting me be honest. I'd rather leave than keep living a lie." It was unbelievable, the coldness, the confidence, the way she placed the blame on me as if I was the one forcing her to break us apart. I tried to stay calm, tried to think rationally, but all I could feel was a deep ache spreading through my chest. When we married, I thought love meant compromise, understanding, and patience. But this wasn't love. This was betrayal disguised as honesty. I asked her quietly, "Have you been seeing him behind my back?" She hesitated. That pause was enough. She didn't need to answer. I already knew. Her silence spoke volumes. She finally looked down, unable to meet my eyes. "It started as friendship," she murmured. "Then things got complicated. I didn't plan it, David. It just happened." That line, "it just happened," felt like a knife twisting deeper. I wanted to shout, to demand why, to ask how she could throw everything away so easily. But I couldn't. My voice betrayed me. All I managed to say was, "And now you want to accept it?" her eyes filled with something like guilt, but not enough to change her mind. I don't want to lose you, but I also don't want to give him up. I thought maybe we could find a way to make it work. For a moment, I just stared at her, realizing how far apart we had grown. The woman I loved had become a stranger, and yet she was sitting right in front of me. Every memory, our wedding day, the trips, the laughter, flashed before me like an old film playing in reverse. I stood up slowly, the chair creaking under the weight of my decision. "I can't share you, Clara," I said, my voice trembling but steady. "Love doesn't survive like that. You can't ask me to accept another man in our marriage and still expect me to stay the same." She looked disappointed, but not surprised. She gathered the papers and stood as well, moving around the table toward me. "Then maybe this is goodbye," she whispered. I didn't want to end like this, but I can't keep pretending either. She left the papers on the counter and walked toward the door. I didn't follow her. I couldn't. The sound of her footsteps faded down the hallway, leaving behind a silence so deep it hurt. I sank back into the chair and stared at the papers again. My name printed beside hers, once symbols of unity, now the proof of separation. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, thinking about all the moments that led to this. When had we stopped being us? Was it when I started spending more time at work? Or when she began sharing her thoughts with someone else instead of me? Somewhere along the way, the connection had snapped, and I hadn't even realized it. Over the next few days, she didn't come home. I didn't call her either. There was nothing left to say. My friends told me to fight for her, but what was I supposed to fight for? A love that now had conditions? On the fifth night, she texted me, "I hope you'll forgive me one day." I just couldn't lie anymore. Forgiveness. The word lingered in my mind, but it felt hollow. How do you forgive someone who chooses another person and still expects your understanding? I wanted to hate her, but all I felt was exhaustion, a deep, aching emptiness that swallowed every ounce of anger before it could grow. A week later, she came to the house to pick up her things. She was calm, polite, almost distant, like she was visiting a stranger's home. I watched her move through the rooms, touching memories that no longer belonged to her. When she reached the doorway, she paused and looked back. "I really did love you, David," she said softly. "I just couldn't stay in a life that felt like a cage." I didn't respond. There were no words left that could fix what she had already broken. She smiled faintly, the same calm smile from that first night, and then she was gone. After she left, I sat alone for a long time. The house felt heavier, emptier. Every room echoed with what used to be laughter, arguments, love, silence. I realized then that sometimes people don't stop loving you because they hate you. They stop because they start loving someone else more. And that truth, painful as it was, became the moment I understood you can't force someone to stay, and you can't beg for loyalty that's already gone. Sometimes, accepting the end is the only way to save what's left of yourself. The following weeks passed in slow motion, as if time itself had lost meaning. Every morning, I woke to an empty side of the bed, the imprint of her absence more noticeable than her presence had ever been. Her perfume still lingered faintly in the air, clinging to the fabric of our curtains and the collar of my shirts. For days, I couldn't bring myself to wash them, as if doing so would erase the last traces of the woman I once believed would grow old with me. I tried to keep myself busy, burying my thoughts under work and meaningless tasks. But loneliness has a way of finding cracks in your routine, slipping through even when you think you're fine. I'd sit at the kitchen table, staring at the spot where she once placed her coffee every morning, and the memory would hit me again like a fresh wound. I wondered if she missed me, even a little, or if Ethan, the man she asked me to accept, had already taken my place completely. Did she laugh with him the same way she used to with me? Did he know the way she liked her tea slightly too sweet, or that she always hummed when she was nervous? The thought of her sharing those small, intimate details with someone else tore at my chest. One evening, after another long day of silence, I decided to take a walk around the neighborhood. The air was cool, and the streets were half lit with the soft orange glow of streetlights. Every familiar corner reminded me of her. The cafe where we used to stop for breakfast, the park bench where she once confessed her fears about the future, and even the small bookstore where she dragged me in just to browse, though she always left with at least 3 novels. I stopped near the cafe window and saw something that froze me in place. Inside, at our old table, Clara was sitting, smiling. She was laughing in a way I hadn't seen her laugh in months. And across from her sat Ethan. He leaned in close, brushing her hand as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Her eyes sparkled, her posture relaxed. It was a scene that used to belong to me, now rewritten with someone else. I stood outside for what felt like forever, the glass between us serving as a cruel reminder of how distant she had become. When I finally walked away, I didn't feel anger anymore, just a heavy acceptance that some things, once broken, can't be repaired. Love isn't a game of endurance. Sometimes, no matter how much you give, it's not enough for someone who's already decided to leave. That night, I went home and finally did what I've been avoiding. I signed the divorce papers. My hands trembled slightly as I placed my signature at the bottom, the ink bleeding into the paper like the end of a story. I left the documents on the kitchen counter, took a deep breath, and poured myself a glass of water. It was strange how something so small, so simple, could feel like the heaviest thing I had ever done. The next morning, I sent them to her through our lawyer. There was no drama, no last conversation, just silence. She didn't reach out afterward, and I didn't expect her to. Some endings don't need closure. The distance itself becomes the answer. Weeks turned into months. Life slowly began to take shape again, though it felt unfamiliar. I learned to cook for one, to come home to silence without feeling suffocated by it. I started reading again, exercising, rediscovering parts of myself that had been buried under the weight of keeping a crumbling marriage alive. But healing isn't a straight path. There were nights when memories hit harder than expected, when I'd hear a song we both loved or find one of her old hair ties tucked in a drawer. I'd sit there holding it, realizing how something so small could carry so much history. Then one afternoon, out of nowhere, she called. Her name on my screen made my heart skip. For a moment, I didn't know if I should answer, but curiosity or maybe old habit made me swipe right. Her voice was soft, hesitant. Hi, David. Clara. I replied, keeping my tone neutral. I just wanted to say, I got the papers. Thank you for signing them. I know it wasn't easy. There was a long pause. I didn't know what to say, so I stayed silent. She continued, I'm not calling to ask for anything. I just wanted you to know that I regret how I handled things. You didn't deserve the way I ended it. I closed my eyes, letting her words sink in. Part of me wanted to ask why she did it, why she had to drag another person into our story. But I realized it didn't matter anymore. The answers wouldn't change what had already happened. She went on. Ethan and I were not together anymore. The words hung in the air, but they didn't bring satisfaction or revenge. I simply felt sad, not for her, but for what we had lost along the way. I hope you find what you're looking for, I said quietly. She sighed softly. I thought I already had, David. I just didn't realize it until it was too late. We both stayed quiet for a few moments before she whispered goodbye. When the call ended, I sat there for a while, thinking about everything that had led us to this moment. Sometimes, love doesn't end in hatred or bitterness. Sometimes it just fades into silence, leaving behind echoes of what could have been. After that day, I made a decision. I packed a small bag and took a trip out of town, somewhere far from the memories, the routines, and the ghosts of our marriage. I rented a cabin near a quiet lake, surrounded by tall trees and endless skies. For the first time in a long while, I felt a strange kind of peace. Each morning, I'd watch the sunrise paint the water in shades of gold and silver. The air was fresh, untouched by the noise of the city or the weight of the past. I started journaling, pouring every thought, regret, and hope onto paper. Writing became my therapy, my way of stitching myself back together. In time, I began to understand that letting go isn't about forgetting. It's about accepting that some chapters must end so new ones can begin. Clara's departure had shattered me, but in that destruction, I found clarity. I learned that love isn't proven by how much pain you can endure. It's proven by how you choose to heal after it ends. Months later, when I returned home, I was no longer the same person. The emptiness that once haunted the house had faded. I replaced her old photos with my travel pictures, redecorated the living room, even adopted a dog, a quiet, loyal companion who seemed to sense when I needed silence and when I needed warmth. One evening, while walking my dog by the lake, I met someone new, a woman named Elise. She was kind, patient, and calm in a way that felt effortless. We started with small conversations, sharing coffee and stories about life, pain, and hope. Unlike before, I didn't rush anything. I didn't try to fill the void left behind. I simply allowed connection to grow naturally. She never asked about Clara, and I never brought her up. Some stories are better left in the past, not out of bitterness, but out of respect for the person you've become. As months passed, I realized something profound. Clara's leaving wasn't the end of my life. It was the beginning of understanding my worth, of realizing that love built on conditions isn't love at all. The right person will never make you choose between your peace and their freedom. They'll find a way to exist with both. One night, sitting by the window with a cup of tea, I looked up at the stars and felt gratitude instead of pain. Clara's memory no longer hurt. It had transformed into a lesson, one about acceptance, self-respect, and the quiet power of moving on. Sometimes, the hardest part of love isn't losing someone. It's finding the strength to let them go without losing yourself in the process. That's what I finally did. I let go, not with anger, but with peace. And in that moment, I realized that the end of our story wasn't my failure. It was my rebirth.